Hello students, welcome to yet another session on supply. In earlier session, we understood about meaning of supply and scope of supply. Here, we would be understanding components and types of supply. A supply under GST has three attributes that are used to calculate tax owed for that transaction: place, value, and time. Place of supply determines whether the transaction is intrastate or interstate. The value of supply determines the taxable value of supply made. And the time of supply determines when the associated taxes and GST returns are due. First, let us understand the place of supply. It is very important to understand the place of supply for determining the right tax to be charged on the invoice. Here I have taken an example where location of service receiver is in Maharashtra, while the place of supply is either from Maharashtra or Kerala. So two examples have been taken, that is of intrastate and interstate. So the GST applicable in intrastate would be CGST and SGST, while in interstate it would be IGST. Supply of goods. The place of supply of goods. Usually in case of goods, the place of supply is where the goods are delivered. So the place of supply of goods is place where the ownership of goods changes. What if there is no movement of goods? In this case, the place of supply is the location of goods at the time of delivery to the recipient. For example, in case of sales in a supermarket, the place of supply is the supermarket itself. Now, let us take another case, that what would be the place of supply in cases where goods that are to be assembled and installed. The place of supply will be the location where the installation is done. Here I am taking an example of supplier from Kolkata and recipient from Delhi, and installation is being done at Kanpur. So let us understand it. A supplier located in Kolkata supplies machinery to the recipient in Delhi. The machinery is installed in the factory of the recipient in Kanpur. In this case, the place of supply of machinery will be Kanpur, because place of supply will be the location where the installation is done. In earlier slides, we understood about place of supply for goods. Here, we will be understanding place of supply for services. Generally, the place of supply of services is the location of the service recipient. In cases where the services are provided to an unregistered dealer and their location is not available, the location of service provider will be the place of provision of service. Special provisions have been made to determine the place of service for the following services: service related to immovable property, restaurant services, admission to events, transportation of goods and passengers, telecom services, banking, financial and insurance services. In case of services related to immovable property, the location of the property is the place of provision of services. Let us understand the provision for immovable property with an example. Mr. Anil from Delhi provides interior designing services to Mr. Ajay from Mumbai. The property is located in Ooty, that is Tamil Nadu. So there are three places involved in this example: Delhi, Mumbai and Ooty. In this case, place of supply will be the location of the immovable property, that is Ooty, Tamil Nadu, and accordingly GST will be applied. Now let us understand the special provision of transport service. Here I have taken an example where a registered taxpayer offers passenger transport services from Bangalore to Hampi. The passengers do not have GST registration. What will be the place of supply here? The place of supply is the place from where the departure takes place. That is, in this case, Bangalore is the place of supply. Now coming up to second aspect, that is Value of supply of goods or services. Value of supply means the money that a seller would want to collect the goods and services supplied. Here, the amount collected by the seller from the buyer is the value of supply. But where parties are related and reasonable value may not be charged or transaction may take place as a barter or exchange, the GST law prescribes that the value on which GST is charged must be its transactional value. Transactional value is the value at which unrelated parties would transact in the normal course of business. It makes sure GST is charged and collected properly even though the full value may not have been paid. Now coming up to third aspect, that is time of supply. It means the point in time when goods and services are considered supplied. When the supplier knows the time, it helps him to identify due date for payment of taxes. CGST or SGST or IGST must be paid at the time of supply. Goods and services have separate bases to identify the time of supply. Let's understand them in detail with the examples. First, we will be discussing about time of supply of goods. Time of supply of goods is earliest of the following: date of issue of invoice, last date on which invoice should have been issued, and date of receipt of advance or payment. Whichever is earliest is the time of supply. Using this example, we can understand the concept of time of supply of goods. Here, Mr. X sells to Mr. Y goods worth rupees 1 lakh. The invoice was issued on 15 January. The payment was received on 31st January. The goods were supplied on 20th January. So, the time of supply is earliest of date of issue of invoice and last date on which invoice should have been issued. That is 20th January. So, 15th January comes to be the time of supply which is earliest. Now, what would happen if this example is taken to another extent? So, if in the same example an advance of 50,000 is received from Mr. X on 1st January, the time of supply for advance of rupees 50,000 will be 1st January, since the date of receipt of advance is before the invoice is issued. For the balance of rupees 50,000, the time of supply will be 15 January when the invoice is issued. Time of supply for services also has some aspects to be considered. That is, the time of supply of service is earliest of the following: date of issue of invoice, date of receipt of advance or payment, and date of provision of service if invoice is not issued within the prescribed period. We can understand it with an example. Mr. A provides services worth rupees 20,000 to Mr. B on 1st January. The invoice was issued on 20th January and the payment for the same was received on 1st February. In the present case, we need to first check if the invoice was issued within the prescribed time. The prescribed time is 30 days from the date of supply, that is 31st January. The invoice was issued on 20th January. This means that the invoice was issued within the prescribed limit. The time of supply will be earliest of the date of issue of invoice, that is 20th January. Date of payment is on 1st January. So which one is earliest? It is 20th January. This means that the time of supply of services will be 20th January. Now coming up to another concept, that is time of supply under reverse charge. Reverse charge means the liability to pay tax is on the recipient of supply of goods or service instead of supplier of such goods or services in respect of notified categories of supply. Supplies of goods under reverse charge mechanism are cashew nuts not shelled or peeled, BD wrapper leaves, tobacco leaves, silk yarn, etc. All these are supplied by agriculturists and recipient is any registered person. In case of reverse charge, the time of supply for service receiver is earliest of the date of payment, that is 30 days from the date of issue of invoice for goods or 60 days for services. Now, date of payment is not applicable for goods and applies only to services. That is, here we have to understand that date of payment will be 60 days for services. To understand the concept, I have taken an example. Here, Messrs. ABC Private Limited undertook service of a director of Mr. X worth rupees 50,000 on 15 January. The invoice was raised on 1st February. Messrs. ABC Private Limited made the payment on 1st May. So the time of supply here would be amongst the two, whichever is earliest. Date of payment is 1st May and 60 days from the date of invoice counts to be 2nd April. So the time of supply of service is 2nd April. So this was all about the components of supply. In the next session, I would be taking up types of supply.